I don't know how many of you guys remember Bill Pulte, but here is a person, if you're not too familiar, has the future of the housing crisis sitting in his hand. Now, Bill Pulte was actually a guest on our podcast in a very early stage. I believe we had him on 3 years ago. And so what Pulte used to do, Pulte is he's a Nepo baby. His grandfather is an extremely successful real estate developer. And one of the things that he was doing for a period of time, he was basically playing a role, I guess, of like a human version of GoFundMe. So people that needed help financially online, he would contribute to them and help them in their time of need. But he's also somebody who doesn't actually believe in any type of a government that really works on behalf of the people, that essentially everything should be privatized, which is why Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two primary home mortgage loans, which are government backed in this country, should no longer be protected by the federal government, that they should all be privatized. That's his plan. Now, call me cynical, call me crazy, but I don't think that's a very good idea. I think that there are certain things that right now would be best served as to not have somebody who is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency in charge of basically deciding that all housing needs to be completely privatized. And what does that mean? It means that workforce housing, goodbye, low-income housing, goodbye.
Rural housing loans, USDA loans.
Free for all. The real motive, Piano Man, is that there are people that are at the heads of society, especially ones that were born at the heads of society, that simply believe in serfdom. They believe that people are supposed to be serfs.
That's right.
That's it.
That's and that's easily tracked. If you go and you look up the dogma of Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, go look it up. These guys believe that, and then they work with people like the Heritage Foundation, because a lot of those guys want to kind of create a Christo-national state, or at least like little pockets of states that are completely Christian national.
I think that's a means to an end. Yes, there's religious nut jobs out there, but they're all used for political purposes, just like the heads of
what I'm getting at. They work with those people right now because for the purposes of the tech bros and the oligarchs, it benefits them to work with those people now. You know what I mean? So it's like that's a convenient crossover, you know. But the real people, you hit it on the head, Peter. This is a march toward like a techno monarchy, a new kind of monarchy. They don't want us owning anything. They want us all renting. So we go to work. If we're lucky enough to get a job, we go to work. The rest of us die because a lot of these people believe that there's overpopulation. That's just true. I know I sound like a crazy person, but this is just fact. A lot of them will talk about, you'll hear Andreessen, Thiel, a lot of these guys talk about overpopulation. I've actually heard that from Bill Pulte before too. And so there's an underlying feeling that there's too many people already. They kind of don't need so many poor people to work for them, especially with AI and stuff growing. So we need to kind of deal with the poor people problem. And they want to privatize everything, because if everything is privatized, more housing can be bought up, taken away from us so that we're not homeowners. And in that way, I diverge from like communist people and stuff like that. I mean, I guess I'm more democratic socialist. I don't know what the fuck I am. I'm a humanist. But if you, I believe that people should have the right. All I want is like a trailer and a couple acres so that I can grow a garden. That's all I want. I believe that people should have the right to do that. People should be able to start their own small business if they want and flourish. I believe in that kind of stuff. I am not the state owns everything. I do not want the state telling me where I can live and where I can move. That's just me. But people like this guy is no different than the people that want the state to own everything and want to be able to tell you where to move and what to do. This guy just wants big corporations to be the ones to tell. Well, I don't know about this guy. The purpose of the plan overall of these, I don't know, these techno, like, theocrats or whatever, they want to be able to own it all, and then they delineate to us what happens. So instead of replacing the government kind of controlling everything, it's them controlling everything. And that's the irony to me. And that's why I laugh sometimes at people that are like, I'm anti-communist, but I support, I don't know, I support the government taking over. I want the liberty to me is being able to monitor everything you do and take away your First Amendment rights. Go and lock them up, shoot them on the street. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? That's what despots do.
Yeah,
But then they'll praise someone like a Bill Pulte, and they'll say, good, this will save me on taxes if it's privatized. These
they don't
middle-class
understand.
people think they'll get a tax break, and screw everyone else just so they can get an extra $500 a year, when the reality is they're going to end up paying more in the long run if all these social services are cut.
Well, as they say, it's like temporarily embarrassed millionaires, but it becomes a much bigger problem. I mean, that's debatable.
Housing, you're going to be able to speak on this much better than me, Peter.
Yeah. Well, I'm in commercial real estate, and what I can tell you is that there are those that believe that debt is a great thing, and then there are those who believe that debt is a form of slavery. So it really just depends how much control you have over the asset in question.
I agree with that. I agree with her.
One of the worst examples of that you have is Grant Cardone, who is attached at the hip of Donald Trump. But one of the things that makes Cardone go out there and talk about his huge multifamily investment deals and why debt is such a great thing has to do with the fact that he's backed by Blackstone. Now, not everybody wants to talk about that little caveat because it's a really big problem, an inconvenient truth, if you will, that people do not want to hear. And so you get somebody like Pulte who's going to come in and say, well, we have all these problems with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Listen, nothing's perfect. But what I could tell you, especially about Freddie Mac, is that there is no more secure loan in the world than the Freddie Mac loan. So if you have it and your asset is a part of it, you are going to be in good shape, even if the economy goes in a very bad direction. But if you have a commercial bank owning your property and things go bad, you are not going to get any benefits like you would from the government. They will find a way to suck up that asset and make it their own. So when Pulte is talking about doing is benefiting the super rich, first and foremost, maybe a few beneath, but screwing everybody else. That's what's going to happen. And so we are going to take you guys into a little step into the past. You'll see I look a little different. But this is a clip from over 3 years ago when Bill Pulte was on our podcast. And we tried to kind of get an idea of where his head was at when it came to economics.
And not so much the political discussion in terms of, I didn't really think of it through a political prism as much as I just thought, like, to your point about red tape, we got to get rid of this red tape and, enough of this BS. And, when you look at, and I love big charities. Okay. My family has a big charity, but
why do they love big charities, Z?
Because with charities, then they can pick and choose. Well, there's a few different reasons. They can pick and choose who gets help, if anyone does. Secondly, they can use those charities to say, hey, we're doing good things. So a lot of times it's just PR while they're racking in and kind of screwing people over. And the third reason is it's just another way for people to be dependent instead of having actual real socioeconomic change.
And of course, you have the big tax write-offs too. Don't forget about those.
Yes, of course.
You have big charities, or when you have these balls or these galas, as I call it, and you spend all this money on all of this overhead, let's say, that is all money and resources that might be able to go to people directly. And so, yes, that was a very motivating part for me, was to get rid of the red tape. And we try to do that every day. I mean, most of the time it's me. It's it's basically 100% me. And so when I see something, it's just, okay, should we do that? Boom. And then it's instantaneous. It's right away. So there's no diddle dallying around or anything like that. And, if I added any bureaucracy to your point about politics, it would materially slow things down, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But, one of the things that we see with nonprofits, and it's unfortunate, is, especially the ones down here in South Florida, is organizations that start out, let's say, really grassroots, really well-intended. We're going to serve, we're building community. And then they get bigger and bigger, and then they get co-opted. And now the next thing you know is they're really no longer doing anything. They're just existing to serve their payroll. Like they're just existing to be this nonprofit. And I've seen it down here with several organizations. We've seen it. And I mean, that to me is the biggest problem when I look at big nonprofits is are they actually serving, or are they just existing to make payroll?
Well, I think that's wise, and I agree with you. And unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, I don't think it's so fortunate. Human nature, I think, is always going to be greedy, and human nature is always going to want power. And so, there was an old saying, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what you're describing in terms of how things start and then how things end, that's why even with any money that's sent to me, or any money that I would ever make off of social media in terms of profit, I would just give back. Because
Okay, so what he's saying essentially is what Trump always says when it comes to his presidential salary. I give it all to charity. I don't take any salary. Well, Bill Pulte is a very wealthy man, and he was born into immense wealth. And this is also the one thing that people who espouse this free market ideology of no safety net whatsoever, the only thing that they happen to be right about is the fact that we on the other side have to deal with this bloated bureaucracy that comes as a result of these nonprofits. And Jen was 100% right on that point. But then you have people like Pulte who are not looking to fix the problem. They're looking to eliminate one and cause another one that benefits them. That's the problem. It isn't about
another problem, and I don't know if it's true for him, but where he just said he gets to make 100% of the decisions. I don't know exactly what he means there, but it made me think. Oh, go ahead.
His organization, the Pulte Capital.
One of the problems I have with this is that, rich people that are from extremely wealthy families or from wealth, even if it's just upper middle class wealth, I'll see them go into nonprofits. I'll see them go into whatever, and I'll see them. And I won't say it by name, but I saw this media company that's a new media company that was like, we're a media company that's going to hire Black women. And then I look at and we're going to challenge the establishment, or we're going to challenge the people who are from, establishment media. And then I go and look, and the two heads are like very wealthy women. Both of them used to be in the mainstream media circuit, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, and they're sitting at the top of this organization as the founders. So if you have this idea, great. If your idea is to uplift the voices of poor people and stuff like that, I hate the term uplift. Just let poor people be at the head of the fucking organization. Why do you have to be at the top? You've never been in our shoes, but you're going to be the one making the decision for us. It's very infantilizing, and I think it's a major problem that we see in the nonprofit world.
Well, that also has to do with there's a lot of ego in the room. Guys have to be recognized for their benevolence. That's a huge part. Yeah. And don't forget, Nepo babies have an extra chip on their shoulder.
True.
The problem is once you try to start benefiting from it personally, financially, in terms of profits and pocketing them and these type of things, it can really corrupt the thing. So, I make sure that at least I do that anyway.
Yeah. But you're also just you. So that's, you're able to just be you without having to have an organization that's, with a board and all of that stuff. You're just you. That's freedom. I mean, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. I want to be you, Bill. That's what I want.
I don't really subscribe to the idea that you need money in order to do it. I mean, even just the fact that you're having me on and spreading this whole thing. I mean, it could be, as far as I'm concerned, you could be reaching people who could donate to the kid who got his eyes blown out with the gunshot, right? So, it's not one of those things where you need to be rich. I mean, yeah, to, do the amount of money that I'm giving away in those things, yes, of course. But if everybody does their part, that's the power of this team is, when we put something up, it's not Bill Pulte. And I sometimes make a point. I say, I'm not donating to this one because I want the team to handle it. And if everybody chips in $1, $5, $10, you can take care of a lot of people, especially when you're dealing with, the internet, and we can reach so many people.
At the time, I remember I made a point to highlight the people that were commenting. These are people that all, I believe, received some type of contribution from Bill. And I can certainly understand that it meant a lot to them. But now he wants to take it a step further and take control of the entire operation. And that, like I said, we do not have the much like we don't have the separation of church and state, we do not have the public and private sector separated anymore. It has basically been molded into one. And while something like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac should be left alone, if you're going to reform it and fix the problems, you can do that. But that's not what they want to do. They want to completely take the gloves off because what they see are dollar signs. They see dollar signs for people at the very top. And I can tell you that the more money you have, the easier it is to maintain your wealth and power and grow it. Interest rates, loans, there's so many different ways that this works. That for people who do not understand what it's like to have $100,000, much less $1 million, much less 10 million, it's a whole other world. And it's a world that very few people will ever understand. And so somebody like Pulte, especially somebody who is not a rags to riches person, somebody who was born into that wealth, that is so much worse because he doesn't know what the bottom feels like. He wouldn't know it even if he pretended to be at that bottom for a period.
Completely out of touch. And they're so arrogant, some of these people, and I'm not talking about him because I don't know the dude, but many of these wealthy folks are so out of touch, but they're so arrogant in thinking that they know exactly what it's like for us because I don't know why. I don't know why they imagine that they know when they have no clue. I will say, you know what it reminds me of, Pete? His plan reminds me of Abundance, Ezra Klein's whole vision.
Ugh.
It does, right? I think
makes
that
me
this
vomit.
guy is in that whole YIMBY sort of circle that was
absolutely.
co-opted by developers. And so is Ezra Klein. So like they're like completely deregulate and privatize everything essentially. And then we'll remove all the red tape and we'll get to do all this great stuff. Well, I agree that sometimes there's zoning issues. Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll agree that sometimes there's issues with over policing in construction and development. That can happen. But a lot of times, you know what happens is that Elon Musk comes in and builds a freaking AI plant with basically his own power plant that isn't regulated properly and poisons an entire community. That's usually what happens. Or an entire neighborhood gets bought out by Bridgeport or someone like that. And then that neighborhood is then rented out and they'll let those houses sit empty if they can't get $2,300 a month for rent because they bought it cheap because they pushed people out of their homes, foreclosing on mortgages. So, I mean, some red tape pulling back is great. But when you're talking about completely tearing down any and all kind of federal oversight or federal programs, that's just what? No regulations on corporations at all. And I guess that these CEOs are just gonna do the right thing out of the kindness of their hearts.
The system's going to break, my friend. That's essentially where we're at.